You're listening to the Precision Shooting Podcast, discussing all aspects of precision and long-range rifle shooting. This episode is brought to you by Impact Dynamics, advanced training for the precision shooter. And now, over to your hosts.
Well, welcome to the Precision Shooting Podcast. This is episode number 11. I'm Rusty, and over there in the corner is Greg. How you doing, Greg?
Yeah, good, Rusty.
Excellent. Next to me is Andrew. How you going?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks, Sam.
Fantastic. And Dan, back again for second episode. Well done, mate.
I am, thank you.
2 in a row. Perfect. So, guys, how has your week been?
Weekend was good.
Yeah?
Yeah. Week's been normal work week, but weekend was a bit of shooting, so yeah, it's good.
I think we all got out for a shoot, actually, this weekend.
We did.
Almost together. We all ended up in the same place, but didn't actually shoot together. Greg, you had probably the most exciting time.
Yeah, went down the southeast and chased a few foxes around. So, yeah, just under spotlight and got the 243 out, and we ended up with 10 foxes for the night. So it was a good night.
Yeah, not bad at all. Fantastic.
It'll be interesting to see how your hit ratio improves with the new rifle.
Yes.
The Defiance. No.
That one's a bit later down the track, I think.
Oh, yeah, no, it's a bit of a way out.
Fair enough. With the new 6mm. Any updates on that, Greg?
Yeah, I got the bottom medal in. So I got the Atlas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I got the Atlas Works bottom medal, with the flush ejection lever.
Mag release, yeah.
Yeah, mag release that's flush with the trigger guard.
Oh, yeah.
So that's in. I've got that. Now I'm ready to go. I've just really got to just dig the money up now to get the barrel put on and make it happen.
Yeah, nice.
And what's your thoughts on it, Greg, now you got it and you've seen it? You like it? You prefer it there on the trigger guard, the mag release?
Yeah, no, it's nice. I guess I played with it a bit and the tension seems right. I guess it's going to be, playing with it off the rifle. Yeah. It probably seems a little bit more difficult, I guess, but when you've got your hand around the neck, it would probably work quite well. But yeah, I'm happy with it. So
Very
it's
good.
Just about getting it put in now.
Good. So you're happy with like the sort of quality and general sort of fit? And
yeah, look,
of it?
all the machining looks, spot on. Obviously it's very light because it's the aluminium version, so it feels light and tinny, but you can see that it's really well produced. Mm-hmm. Yep. And the actual feel of the lever seems pretty consistent, and a nice strong spring in there. So nice. It's just a matter of getting it in. I think it. I'm happy with it.
Making it happen. Yeah, we actually got a message on Facebook from one of our listeners, and he sent through a photo of the Atlas Works bottom medal that he had that he was a big fan of.
Yep.
He said he enjoyed it. So hopefully your experience will be the same.
Yeah, not happy so far.
Absolutely. And Dan, you did a pretty decent shot on the weekend.
Yeah, we finally got to test out those 230 grain burgers, the OTMs. Amazing velocities coming out of a 300 Win Mag. I didn't think we'd get anywhere near those sort of numbers.
What were you getting out of it?
3,025 feet per second was the average.
That's pretty good.
Very good with a 230. And that was chronographed with a magneto, so I do expect that to be fairly accurate. Well, it was by throwing the data up and then shooting it 10 rounds to get an average, and then we took it straight out to 800, and then we moved on to a mile.
Yeah, and got a hit.
We did. We got a couple of hits at a mile. One in the 6-inch gong. So yeah, very good. Very happy.
Be nice to shoot that in maybe some better conditions.
You're right. It was tough. It was the mirage almost made the target invisible at times when that having the sun straight up in front of you like that made it very difficult.
I don't know if you experienced when you guys were shooting, but I was shooting a little bit later, and we had the mirage running in contrast to the wind. So the wind was blowing left to right, but the mirage was running right to left, which made it pretty hard to pick that.
Yeah, that's right.
At a mile.
Yeah, well, that's all we were using as far as wind cooling was going was mirage, because we didn't really have much else to go off of.
No, there's not a lot out there.
Yeah, and I remember you mentioning that you've seen the wind coming left to right and then all of a sudden turning around and going the opposite way.
Yeah.
And I experienced that on the weekend and couldn't believe how quickly it changed.
Yeah, this is down at Southern Shooters place, and it's it can change within 10 seconds. It can turn around.
Yeah, and I've seen wind change before, but not that quickly. Like it was literally
to the full 180.
Yeah, it was like normally you'll see it. It's blowing left to right, and then it'll calm down. It'll almost calm down to nothing, and then over a space of maybe a couple of minutes or so, it'll swing around from another direction.
Yep.
This did a full 180 in a matter of a couple of seconds.
Yeah.
Just one thing, Rusty, you mentioned the wind was going one way and the mirage was going the other.
Yeah.
When were you rolling through parallax? Could you actually see that occurring with, like, where the wind was going one way? Could you see that haze going one way and then the mirage at the other end going the other way by rolling through parallax?
Do you know what? I don't recall closer in what it was doing. We were purely. I was spotting, and I was purely looking at the 1600.
Yeah, okay.
And it was we made the correction for what looked like the apparent windage from the mirage, and it was completely the wrong direction. It was almost exact right call, the wrong way.
Yeah, challenging wind.
I think what it was, Greg, is because the mirage was so thick and it was quite warm down there. It was sort of mid-30s, I guess.
Yeah.
It made it very difficult to actually view the mirage out further. So what you really were looking at was the closer in mirage.
Yeah, okay.
And the wind obviously was changed out further, but it was difficult to see through the thick haze in closer.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it was just even I was behind a spotting scope and I tried to sort of dial through that and see what it was doing. It was just boiling. You couldn't see really what it was doing.
Yeah.
And in absence of any other wind indicators, you just really had to go off full of shot and then correct from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's good fun though. Certainly it was good fun being out there.
Makes it a bit easier to spot the trace though. It was booming in there on the weekend, wasn't it?
Yeah. You see every single one.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good fun. Well, it's good to get out and shoot and have a bit of fun out with the lads. We didn't get to go hunting quite so much, but I guess Greg did that for us, which was good on you, Greg.
Thumbs up.
Cheers for that, mate.
Yep,
I might get a chance to get out next week, actually, which will be nice. Excellent. So we got a question in this. Has anyone got anything else to bring up? We're gonna miss the next podcast for our listeners. Sorry, we are gonna head along to the Southern Shooters Catchup in Adelaide, which is on 2 weeks' time. So it's the 23rd of February. So if anyone's around in Adelaide listening and wants to get down to the Havelock, I think a few of us are going to be there on that particular night. It's just out in the back, and any time from 7 o'clock. That's Tuesday the 23rd. So come and have a beer and talk guns. It's not that difficult, I guess. It's good.
Comes
fun.
naturally.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a lot to. It's easier than reading Mirage and Wind. Much easier. Cool. Has anyone else got anything to talk about, or should we get into our listener question?
Oh, I just want to say you've done a great job with that. With the Southern Shooters range, that steel range you got out there is excellent. Like, it is
good
really,
fun,
really good. Yeah, there's a target from 200 metres to a mile and everything in between, and you just don't normally have that option, like to have that many targets. You can go out and just verify loads and you can true your data and everything. There's a target out there at the right range for you to do all that.
Yeah.
Well done. Good job on it.
Cheers, mate, and big thanks to Sean at STS who has made all those targets and has put them out. Well, given us good deals on them all and donated a few as well to get a few more, and we've got more coming as well, which will as soon as we get a chance to actually hang them up on some frames, there'll be more out there. Excellent. Now we got a question in from Simon on Facebook, so it's you guys can see it if you jump on the Facebook. Someone want to read that out for us?
You're closest, Dan. Far away.
My back's towards it.
I'll do it.
Greg, you can see it?
Yep. Yeah.
Great. Go ahead.
He's got, hey, blokes, got a question for you. I'm looking for a hunt gun for stalking deer, goats, pigs, etc., with a focus on deer, which restricts calibers available to me somewhat, and we'll talk about that a bit later. It needs to be as short as possible and light so I can carry it all day if need be. I'm also left-handed, which cuts down the options.
Poor bloke.
Yep, should be drowned. I've narrowed down calibers to 270 Win, 7mm 08, 7mm rim mag. I'm looking at a range of 300 to 350 metres. I like the 7mm 08 at this point, but I don't know how barrel length will affect performance of any cartridge. Also, I'd like to load the best round ballistically. I can for a kickoff. Any suggestions? I'm looking for the right cartridges.
Cool. Anyone got any thoughts on that? We thought we might tackle this and the broader question of cartridge selection, particularly with hunting in mind.
Well, I think it needs to be said straight away that it really doesn't matter what he's going to use, because he's left-handed. He will be awesome.
Right, a slight point of contention then.
So you love my drown comment.
So for those playing at home, Dan is left-handed, and
right.
That's why we let him on the podcast. We, equal opportunity place here. So anyway, anyone got any comments on that? On perhaps a more serious note?
I'll probably kick off before we get into the technical stuff. In that,
right.
Because Simon's talked about deer in Australia, we have some restrictions. So for any international listeners, particularly in Victoria, we have restrictions on hunting deer.
Yep.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I know we talked about it earlier, but it was 243 for fallow deer, and I think hog deer, the small deer varieties.
Right.
And then for the larger deer, it's 270 and above, 270 and 30 cal. In particular, is the wording.
Okay.
So to comply with that, they don't talk about energy or energy on target. So it's particularly around those calibers, 270 and 30 cal or above.
I think, Greg, they used to, any Victorian listeners would probably be able to clarify, but I believe they used to have an overall length of the cartridge of the case, of 2 inches, but I don't believe that's in there anymore.
Okay.
And that might have been, I think, something to do with the WSM, the Winchester Short Magnums were slightly under that, I believe.
Still more than powerful enough.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that was one I was actually going to talk about shortly as being a possible option. But, so given that there are probably many cartridges, a few which we can talk about, that would certainly do the job, he's got some legal issues he has to sort of be abiding by.
Yeah, so I guess we're gonna make sure we cover from 270 up, because he doesn't specify what deer he's going to do, and he does talk. Does he say around Australia? Because we happen to know he's in SA, but let's assume that he's wanting to hunt anywhere in Australia, for any type of deer. So with those things in mind, we're going to be talking from a 270 up, which is obviously something he's considered already, looking at the cartridges of 270, 7mm 08 and 7mm Rem Mag. And I guess the other quantifier there is that he's going to keep his distance up to about 350 metres. There's a couple of questions in there that perhaps we talked to, but perhaps also more in a broader sense as well. He's curious about barrel length and how it will affect performance. Now, we've talked about barrel length a couple of times. Does anyone want to make a quick comment on that? Because I think we can pass that one off pretty quickly.
I'll make a general comment in that, I spent a fair bit of time in the snowies, running around the snowies, and although I did chase a bit of deer around, I did enjoy having a scrub gun, so to speak, in terms of, I used to carry a 30-30 lever a lot, and having a shorter rifle was an advantage, because some of the country you go through, you've got to cut your way through it in some areas.
Sure.
So, definitely short is the way to go, but just how short is probably the discussion.
And it's also dependent on the cartridge. I'm just looking at the 3 that he specifically mentioned there. I would think out of those 3, the 270, the 708 and the 7mm Rem Mag, if you were to go with a shorter barrel, a 7mm 08 would be the one that would be least effective. Yeah. You're talking a smaller capacity case. If you go with, say, a 20-inch barrel in a 7mm Rem Mag, you're going to have a huge fireball out the end, and you're going to really have a big dramatic velocity loss in comparison to a 708. So it depends on. There's a lot of things that would depend on how short he's prepared to go.
Yep. Whether he's talking 16, 17 inches or 20, 21.
Well, even a 20-inch barrel, if that was the parameters out of those cartridges, I would say that the 708 sized cartridge would certainly be the probably the choice. But
he's also given a distance there of 350 metres, so it's not like we're trying to get everything out of the cartridge we possibly can. We're not trying to shoot them at 800 metres. So,
yeah, that's right. Yeah, so if you remember, Tactical Operations did a cut down on 308 and 300 Win Mag, and I don't have the data in front of me on it, but 308 was very little affected all the way down to about 16 or 18 inches, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was about 18 inches. There was very little velocity drop. Incrementally down.
So they cut like an inch off the barrel.
Correct. Yeah.
Started with a 26 or 28-inch barrel, and then lopped it and just measured all the velocities, and they did the same with the 300 Win Mag, and the 300 Win Mag obviously benefited from the longer barrel more than the 308 did.
Yeah.
But it was minimal.
Going off what their recommendations was from memory. I think it was either 16 or 18 inch for the 308 and 22 inch for the 300 Win Mag.
Yeah, very good. And those numbers probably correlate back to a 7mm 08 and a 7mm Rem Mag in ratio.
Similar, I think the 7mm. The smaller you go in bore size, the more critical it becomes. But I think for all intents and purposes. Very similar comparisons there. Well, I mean, he's got, there's more options than he's listed there, of course. They're just ones he's come up with off the top of his head. So.
Yeah, certainly. And I think any of those, even with shorter barrels, will, in the 300-metre mark, will perform quite well.
Yeah, like in the scheme of things, the parameters he's listed there for range is not certainly long range by any stretch of the imagination, but, any larger centerfire really is going to be more than capable at those kind of distances, so...
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I've got a preference towards the 708 because I have one in a Tikka in a left hand, and
that you perhaps want to sell to someone?
No, it's too good to sell. The anyhow, and it wasn't. I didn't go with that caliber because I researched it and I looked into it, and I just sort of. I was speaking to a deer hunting guide, and he just raved about how well it killed deer.
Yep,
it put them down, and I don't think that's anything to do probably with the 7mm 08, but 7mm in general, being a good performer terminally, I think. But he did say that you can generally shoot the 7mm 08 more accurately if you're sensitive, more sensitive to recoil and stuff like that. Also,
yeah. Well, the 7mm is generally got good sectional density, which generally speaking corresponds to good penetration. Like on a big sambar deer, you might have a raking shot when it's running away or on an angle or something like that. You that's a important consideration to have. So, I think any of the 7mm would do very well in that regard.
And there's plenty of projectile choice, which is probably another factor in whether he's reloading or purchasing factory ammo.
Yeah,
there's obviously you want something that will be able to purchase with that, and I guess all those cartridges he's listed there, as well as many others, there will be a lot of hunting sort of type projectiles that will do the job. Yeah. Those distances given.
Yeah, no, the 7mm 08 is quite capable. Well, out to 350 metres, not a problem. I've used mine with a Leopold with a long range duplex reticle, which just has a couple of holdover points lower than the crosshair, and it takes me out from my 100 metre zero out to 400, and a holdover point for 2, 3, and 4. And you can actually check those the drop on those reticles against your load data and everything like that, so you can actually choose the right one for your caliber.
Sure.
And that's what I did, and then I just went out and tested it by putting milk jugs out all those ranges and shooting them. So
and it worked.
And there's a lot of, sort of getting slightly off topic, but there are a lot of scopes that have those type of reticles available, and probably for this kind of application of what Simon's talking about, that would probably be a good option. You could zero in at 100, which is going to be, give you point blank out to considerably more than 100, just be dead on. And then, if he was to need to shoot a 300-metre shot, he doesn't need to adjust his scope or anything like that.
No, it's very quick. You can actually make a longer range shot very quickly with a reticle like that if it's calibrated to your load. It's
Sure.
Very quick and easy.
Do we lose or gain anything by recommending the 7mm08 over, say, 270 or 7mm Rem mag?
Personally, I like the 7mm08, but I'd probably out of those three there, like the one the most capable. If he's thinking about ever stretching it out further than what 350 metres, probably the 270 falls into the better bracket.
I mean, there's also, I don't think he should be restraining himself to those three in particular. I mean, I like the 300 Winchester short mag personally.
Yeah.
I know it's getting larger caliber, but it's a pretty capable cartridge, and it's one that can benefit, or should we say, not lose as much from going with a shorter barrel. It's an efficient round.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Shorter, fatter case. They tend to be more. They burn more efficiently. And he's also got the ability with that to go up to sort of a 240 grain Woodley or something like that and shoot buffalo if he was to need to. It depends on how versatile he wants to be, I guess.
If he's going to err on the lighter side of things or the heavier side, and where he wants the versatility in.
Yeah, and I think the rifle is probably the type of rifle is going to remain the same. I mean, if he wants a light hunting rifle, he can carry around, whether he's going to shoot deer and goats up in the hills or whether he's going to go and shoot some buff up in the territory. It's the same type of rifle, really. You're going to be walking a lot on foot. So, But cartridge-wise, there are multiple other options that would certainly be available as well.
Sure.
Yeah, I know, back in Victoria, a lot of guys used to lean towards heavies so they could basically smash it through the bush. So they'd pick up a deer and they'd have to basically penetrate the scrub. You did
like a heavy cartridge.
Yeah, heavy. Yeah. That's where the 30-30 and the 30-06 were pretty popular.
Yep.
Because they would, you'd just get a little bit of colour through a gap and you'd smash it through the bush. Basically, you wouldn't get open shots all that often. So,
yeah, I mean that's a valuable sort of concern to look at. I think any of those particular cartridges listed there with the right projectile choice will certainly would do that. And there's good projectiles available in all those, for 7mm and 270 and for the 30s, of course. But I guess it comes down to how big he's prepared to go, really.
Yeah, because that's going to be one of the benefits of the 7mm08, isn't it? Dan, the recoil?
I just like, 7mm08. The recoil's, it's very manageable. And I mean, it's not 270 is not that great, not much heavier than a 7mm8 on the recoil wise anyway. But I think he's on the right track with 7mm as a caliber for killing.
Sure,
it does a really good job of killing things. Right?
Yeah.
7mm is pretty popular in Europe, isn't it?
Even 6.5 is one of the popular ones over there, and
that performs far more than most people think, doesn't it?
That's right.
In terms of putting game down.
Yeah, and if we weren't talking tonight based on being legal in places like Victoria, I would suggest going to a 6.5 because they the sectional densities and how those bullets perform terminally is really good, and it's surprising. Europeans have been using for a long, long time.
Yep. That's stuff like the 6.5, 55 and 6.5 284s. And
well, I mean, there's a whole range of 6.5 bore diameters ranging up to really quite big cartridges that the Europeans have used for years. So
if it's staying within SA, for example, it's probably a good recommendation.
I would, yeah, and I'm actually considering rebarreling my 7mm08 to a 6.5. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, there was, sort of diverging a little bit. There's videos of the Best of the West guys over in the US who were shooting elk. I mean, elk are sort of comparable size to sambar deer here, and they were shooting them at sort of 900 yards and further with 6.5 284s, and they were going down straight away. But I mean, sort of a bit of a moot point given that he's got some parameters he has to stay within. Probably not a lot of use.
Yeah, certainly an option if he's not looking to use it outside of SA.
Right, so if we were to narrow it down, if we go around the room, what you're going to recommend, Dan, what are you going to say for this one?
Out of those three calibers?
Yep.
Yeah, I'd say 708.
And if it wasn't out of those three, if it was anything...
I'd be a 6.5. Yep.
Greg, what about your suggestion, mate?
I'd grab 270.
270?
Just a fallback in that...
You know it works?
Well, you can go down the local store in the middle of the mountains and buy a packet of 270.
It's a fair point.
So if you're a hunter, he probably only needs the rung factory for some of the stuff he's doing.
Yep.
You can just go down the local, town and pick up a box if you need to, just from a practical standpoint.
And that probably price probably plays into that a little bit, because I know the 708 is relatively expensive.
Yeah. Okay.
But by the same token, if he's only going to use this rifle for 20 or 30 rounds a year, it's probably not a
minimal
huge,
expense.
Yeah, not a massive expense.
Yeah, but outside of those three,
that's a fair point.
Yeah, I'm pretty interested in the 6.5 and what that can do, just from what Dan's been saying. So I'd sort of lean towards that as a trial type caliber if it was legal. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Andrew?
Out of those three, I'd probably go the 708 as well. If those three were not the only ones available, I'd probably look at something like a 300 WSM, personally.
Mm-hmm.
I said, you can get a nice short rifle. It's a shorter cartridge. I mean, he mentions Tikka in his message there, but sort of certainly Tikka are a versatile firearm. But even in other manufacturers, you can get a 300 WSM in a shorter action rifle, and for me the extra versatility would be the way to go. But certainly not necessary for what he's mentioned.
Sure.
So given
and
what
the price is up there as well, if we're going to consider that at all, but.
He doesn't mention that.
He doesn't mention it, so...
No.
Fair
So,
call.
and again, even if it was, I mean, you're talking a hunting rifle, you're not talking about a
Yep.
culling, spotlighting gun, so, yeah, to me that wouldn't really be a big concern.
Absolutely. Very good. I'm gonna go with 7mm08 as well, based on his distances, but if that was to stretch out, or if he wanted to stretch it out, I'd probably be back towards the 7mm Rem Mag out of his suggestions, just to be able to put some more legs on it if he was talking 800 metres or thereabouts, because of the 7mm cartridge being the best, being a good option for that type of shooting. But what I like with what Simon's done here is he has very well clarified his application for this rifle. And I think in the broader discussion of cartridge choice, I see too often where guys are trying to get as many purposes fulfilled with one rifle as they can, which is understandable because we've all got only a limited X amount of dollars to be able to spend on whatever it is we're doing. But Simon's done very well here, where he's put a lot of clarity around. He wants to shoot within this distance on this game predominantly, and here's a few choices that he's made so far, and I think that's a really good way when you are deciding on your cartridges to be able to narrow it down.
And of course, those cartridges don't preclude him from shooting outside of what he's listed. I mean, he could take any of those things spotlighting if he wanted to, or he could shoot foxes or dogs or whatever it might be. But it certainly, he's listed basically the maximum, really, that he's intending it for. And,
absolutely.
He's not expecting something to do something that it wasn't really designed for.
Yeah.
People expecting to shoot buffalo with a 243, for example.
Absolutely. I did a talk on at Shot Expo a couple of years ago now, and we talked about how to decide on what your cartridge selection was, and when you were deciding on what cartridge to get your gun in, you looked at it at a more of a holistic level. So you actually decided on a bit of a collection rather than on one individual gun. And you decided that, I was going to get something in this to fulfill this sort of category, like a 223 as a varmint gun. And then I wanted something like Simon's talking about as a dedicated hunting rifle. And then you perhaps want something, maybe if you're getting out amongst pigs or goats, where perhaps a pump action or something like that was a bit better suited. Have you guys got any thoughts on sort of general cartridge selection, particularly going down this hunting sort of line, but also keeping in mind precision shooting side within that collection?
Yeah, well, it came up on the weekend Rusty, when straight after you finished with one of the students, he came straight inside and he asked us what calibre he should be getting and what gun he should be getting it in. And I suppose that's the number one question that you'd get all the time. And it was really hard to answer his question because he himself didn't really know what exactly it was going to be used for. And this is, you were talking a fairly green shooter here, and we sort of threw a few scenarios at him as to what you may be using it for, and then that sort of, you could see it was ticking over in his head, and he wasn't actually sure everything it was going to be used for. So he was trying to get the one gun to cover everything,
the one ring to rule them all. Yeah,
that's it. And it's just, I don't believe there is such a beast. So I
mean, like you just covered before, Rusty, I think depends on how many dollars you got to throw at it, really.
Of course.
I mean, I know shooters that have got 30 or 40 rifles, ranging from 17s right up to big 500 squares, and I don't think you need to go to that degree, because a lot of those guys that have got those numbers of firearms, they're not proficient with any of them. They've used them all a little bit, but they're not proficient. And some of the better shooters you'll ever see only shoot one or two different calibers. And there's one of the guys that was up on the weekend, he shoots a 243 and a 308, but he shoots them all the time. So somebody like him would be a lot more proficient. So I think it just comes down to how many guns you want to have.
Yeah, look, and I guess from that collection basis, I mean, whether you have 2 or whether you have 40, depends what you're doing and why you're buying them. And if you're going to get yourself a 375 H&H because you're going to go on a buffalo trip at some point, as long as you can handle the recoil, you don't necessarily need to be overly proficient with it. As long as you can point in the right direction, put it on reasonable paper, you're going to hit that buff. Whereas with with a precision rifle, you are going to need to be very proficient with it, and that's the one you got to spend some time on, for sure.
Just sort of just looking at some of the other points he's mentioned in his message to us, we've sort of narrowed in on the actual cartridge selection, but the first thing he talks about is actually the rifle.
What options he's got to go with besides Tika.
Yeah, I mean, being left-handed, it does cut the options down a bit, or considerably.
In life and also in this gun?
Well, the life bit went without saying, but
the man could stand up there and just poke his left hand out in the air and go bang, and it would fall down dead.
Moving right along.
What fantasy world do you live in there, Dan?
But I mean, the point being...
Simon, we'll send you Dan's number. You guys can hang out, because clearly he needs to... Not quite in touch with reality.
Getting right back to it, the reality is, a lot of major manufacturers do cater for left-handers. Unfortunately, they do make up about 10% of the population, so they have to be.
We've just lost 10% of our audience, I think, as well.
Yeah, but we'll make up that for that in increased listeners that are right-handed. So
good.
When I first read the message when it came through, I thought I had was the Montana rifles. I don't know whether you guys are familiar with them at all, but they're effectively a pre-64 Winchester remake copy, if you like. Controlled round feed. They're nicely made. Yeah, they're very nicely made. So, and I know they do a left-handed action.
Okay. Yep.
So, first thing when I read it was, that's probably an option you should look at. Yeah. Again, I'm not familiar with whether they offer sort of stainless synthetic and that sort of thing, but he also hasn't mentioned here what his preference is.
No, true.
So maybe we could get Simon to send us another message and elaborate a little more.
Well, if he's not confused enough and feeling downtrodden because he's left-handed, he may actually communicate with us again. Absolutely. But I think
he's got Seiko 85 do a left-handed.
Yeah, and a couple of their variants.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So there's an option there. There's I'm not sure who else. You'd know, Rusty.
Remington will do some as well. But yeah, I mean, look, he does raise a point that he being left-handed, if he wants a left-handed rifle, it does restrict him to some degree. I mean, look, he can always get a right-handed gun and shoot it left-handed, which in this scenario it may work more so than in some other scenarios.
Yeah, he'd be losing skill by doing that. He'd switching from left to right.
Yeah, that's right. It might bring him closer on point, and he might become a better shooter because of it. You never know.
I mean, getting to the serious side of things, I think
we were, Andrew. We were very.
I was serious.
We have to make Dan feel a little bit better about himself. I think, say shooting a long range precision type rifle.
Yep.
Is probably more where a left-hander can shoot a right-handed rifle and not be disadvantaged by it. But I mean, put a scenario through that stalking deer or pigs or goats or anything that you might encounter running quickly.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to sort of do what's natural for you, regardless of whether it's left-handedness or not. If you can cycle a gun naturally without having to shoot it with your offhand or anything like that, it would be an advantage, I believe, in this situation. So,
sure, yeah. I mean, look, I've spent some time with left-handed shooters, unfortunately, and they actually, if they're using a lightweight gun, they actually can cycle a right-handed bolt faster, in my experience, than they can a left-handed gun, because they leave their, if I get this right, their left hand on the grip, which basically puts it right next to the trigger, and they actually drop their right hand back from holding the front of the gun back to cycle the bolt back down, and away they go, and they actually will outshoot in terms of speed a right-handed shooter. That's on the condition that it's a lightweight gun, because as soon as that gun gets heavier than being able to hold it with your left hand on the grip upright, it gets more difficult.
So you're talking freehand shooting here?
Correct.
Right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. It does. I noticed doing it for years before I had my first left-handed bolt. That's exactly what I used to do. And if they were a lightweight sporter, you can do that. You can do it comfortably, but as soon as you start putting a bit of weight in that barrel,
absolutely agree. Yeah, and I only bring it up because of the conditions he's put on the discussion. So, yeah, nice. It's an interesting point you bring up, Dan, a few moments ago about on the weekend having someone who's relatively, very fresh with long-range shooting and wanting to get into it, asking about caliber choice or cartridge choice. I'm curious to see in the room what you guys would suggest in that scenario. So if it's a brand new shooter who wants to get into precision rifle or long-range shooting, where would they start cartridge-wise?
Okay, so question I always ask is are they going to be reloading or are they going to be buying factory rounds? So that makes a big difference as to.
Let's assume they're going to be buying factory rounds right now. They're very, very fresh. They've just got their license or they're just in the process. Yeah. A gentleman in question that we're talking about was currently in the process of getting his license. He will probably have enough cost factors involved in getting the rifle and a good scope that reloading is perhaps not an option initially.
Yeah. So, in that case, if he's buying ammo, I'll push him. Nearly always, I'd push him towards 308. The price of it, it's a performer. It's been used for years. There's data out there everywhere for 308. A new shooter might not know how to run up a chart already, but he will be able to find out some data on the internet and that. And it's relatively cheap ammo here in Australia, so that would definitely be my choice. 308.
Cool.
I guess we just have to clarify, Rusty. Are we talking the Australian market, or I mean, we've got some slightly different considerations to the US, in that if I was to be, say, talking to somebody in the US about the same question. Mm-hmm. I would probably recommend something like a 6.5 Creedmoor, or I mean, it's a lot more available ammunition-wise and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I guess that no dramas recommend for anywhere in the world you like, but clarify what the difference would be back to Australia, because that's where we are.
Oh, well, I guess given the parameters, we're looking at Australia, I wouldn't recommend that.
Well, no, I don't mind if you're recommending for the US for 6.5 Creedmoor, but why that there and not here?
Okay, the reason I'd recommend that there and not here is ammunition availability, primarily. In that over in the US, I know I've got several friends there. 6.5 Creedmoor ammo is available and it's cheap, relatively.
Okay. Yep. Similar to a 308, perhaps.
I believe, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And given its popularity, it is available.
Yep.
Readily available. Whereas here, if I was to have that recommendation, I would go with Dan and say 308.
Yep.
Because, there's not a lot of 6.5 Creedmoor ammo available here in Australia. So, again,
it seems as soon as you waver away from 223, 308 in Australia, or 3006 or 270, the price of ammo just skyrockets.
It does.
But if you're talking particularly, precision ammunition, like match grade factory ammunition, there's not a lot of option here, really. Or there is, but it's costly and it's rare.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah.
Greg, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, no, I'm the same with 308.
6x47? No?
Yeah, 6x47 is the only way to go. But, no, I'd go with 308 as well. As all the reasons that have been stated, basically, good information out there, all that sort of stuff. But you can also get in with a factory rifle. Let's say you get a Tikka out of the box, you're away. All right? Mm-hmm. And then as your education improves and you start to understand what you're doing and you're ready to make a change, you can rebarrel that. You've got a good basis of action. You could rebarrel and you step it up to a match barrel.
Yep.
And you might go 6.5 or, once you educate yourself. So you can go through a progression, and 308's a good first step in a progression, I think, with factory. And then as you step up to reloading, you can rebarrel that and still produce a pretty good rifle and, build on it, basically. It's something to build on, a platform.
Well, I mean, it's not necessarily even looking at it as a start point to move on from. I mean, 308's, people think, it's a little round, it's not that effective, but I mean, it's still predominantly used in target shooting competitions like F-class standard and...
Yeah, I guess I just mean, someone that's progressively reaching.
That wants to go further.
Yeah, that wants to go further. But you're absolutely right. If someone doesn't want to go over a certain point, there's probably no need to go beyond 308.
I tend to agree with the 308. I wish I had something different to say. Oh, no, guys, you're all wrong. We should go with this. But unfortunately, the 308 is where my head is at. And when guys do ask me what to start with, for all the reasons you guys have listed, is that 308 will it's relatively cheap to run. There is match factory ammunition available. You can get virtually any gun in it, and when you have shot out that barrel or have decided you no longer want to do it, you can rebarrel into so many options. The other one that people often assume is the best place to go is the 300 Win Mag. And I'd sort of try and move people away from that if possible. Some will go with it, and that's fine. But that recoil on a 300 Win Mag is just enough to introduce a flinch into the equation, I find. And realistically, your 300 Win Mag is going to pick up effectiveness from the 1,000 meter or 1,100, maybe 1,200 meters beyond. Whereas out to that range, your 308 will do everything it needs to. The only quantifier for that, for me anyway, is if you were hunting and attempting to hunt at those distances. But perhaps you need some more time on the range rather than buying your first gun to go out and do so.
It's one of those things. Depends on what you want to do, and even if you're long range hunting, like I have a goal of hitting a rabbit at a mile. And you don't need a big bullet to kill a rabbit at a mile.
You're right.
But having said that,
I mean, people try and kill foxes at a couple of metres with a rock.
Some do,
as was mentioned last week.
Yep, and not normally too effectively. But my point being is that my rifle of choice for that scenario, not the 2 metre fox, but the mile rabbit, is going to be a 300 Win Mag because I've got the right type of projectile for maximum efficiency as far as very high BC, and I can push them quickly. And I think you could easily do it with a 6.5 of some variety.
Yep.
But I sort of run the figures, and I think 300 Win Mag would do the job for that. Not to say that I need it
to put the rabbit down. No.
Got to hit it first, but
tis the challenge. Got to find somewhere with a rabbit at a mile.
Well, it's doable.
Absolutely. Well, you got to keep us posted on that challenge, Andrew.
It's coming.
Hopefully, we've confused plenty of people tonight. might have confused ourselves a couple of times. I think we've worked out that that most shooters are right-handed, and that's the way to be. We've established that we've established that fairly firmly. But that aside, Simon, hopefully we've answered your question. If you've got any more clarification you want, come back to us. I think the general gist was somewhere between a 7mm08 and a 270. But well done on really identifying what it is you want to achieve with your gun, because a lot of people don't do that. They're a bit vague in it. Hopefully those listening have found something out from our information, our chats and discussions. Greg, you're pointing at me. What's going on?
Yeah, just before you wrap up, there's probably a couple of other things I just want to throw in for Simon to think about.
Why not?
In terms of the stock, I know when I was running around, you often fall over. It's tough country. So wood is probably not the way to go. And he talks about light and easy to throw around, so probably a synthetic.
Yep.
Plus, a lot of the time it's raining. So he probably needs to think about possibly Cerakote. I know sometimes you go out 3-4 days at a time.
Yep.
With a drizzling rain. And the old coats used to, start to rust up pretty quick if you're not looking after them. So just something to consider as well.
Or stainless steel, preferably.
Yeah, probably stainless. I know when I was in Vic, stainless wasn't popular for the shine factor. I know it's a bit, just from a concealment point of view, for the stalker shooters. The stalker shooters didn't really go for the stainless. They lent more towards the blued.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned Cerakote, Greg, I think that could be done in that case for that reason rather than its corrosion protection.
Yeah, true.
So, yeah.
So has anyone got any other recommendations for Simon on guns or?
Well, just back to what Greg was saying, like
Yep.
stock options these days. For we keep coming back to Tikka because
he mentions Tikka in his comments.
Well, it's a good value. It is a good gun. Like they shoot out of the box. They're really good value. It is light. It's everything that he wants. Maybe the stock might be upgraded. There are a lot more stocks coming out now for that suit Tikkas. So.
Well, I mean, there's a lot more everything available for them, really. I mean, you can accessorise them. You see half of them, we see them with guys doing their long-range courses. They're barely recognisable as a Tikka, so the sky's the limit, really, as far as what you want to do to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So. And Simon is familiar with Tikkas. I know he has one already.
Yeah, but if you have a look at, there's quite a few websites in New Zealand about making a mountain rifle out of a Tikka, and they go right through everything, chopping the barrel down. There's actually a really good article that we could actually find.
Yep.
Chopping the barrel down, changing the stock. They're actually putting carbon stocks on the guns. I know that they're running suppressors over there, so they are running over barrel suppressors. They run through caliber choice, everything right down to the sling on making. It's an article. I think it's called "Making a Mountain Rifle," and it actually goes through an ideal weight, ideal barrel length for each caliber. So that the New Zealanders have got it down pat as far as getting their mountain rifles right.
Well, I mean, by the sounds of it, what they are trying to achieve is exactly what Simon's talking about. In that, they're hunting very similar species. I mean, I'm not sure they got sambar there, but certainly got red deer and elk and everything in between, right down to the small, sort of chamois and stuff like that. So they're trying to do exactly the same thing, effectively.
Yeah.
We'll try and find that article for you, Simon, and put it up on the show notes with this podcast as well.
Yeah, if I remember, the actual one I'm talking about is actually from a magazine, I think.
Yeah, I do believe I've seen it. I'd have to track it down as well.
Yeah.
So has anyone got anything else to add, either for a brand new precision rifle shooter in their cartridge choice, or for Simon with his questions? Or are we done for the evening?
I think we've covered it fairly well, Sam, as far as sort of an overview. Specific questions. So again, we'd certainly invite listeners to send through any specific questions they've got, because it's a little bit hard to cover all the really fine details that could be covered. So, but I think as an overview of what Simon was asking in particular, I think to cover it, basically he's on the right track as far as his cartridges go. any of his cartridges would certainly do the job for him. And as far as the rifle selection goes, well, it's really going to come down to what he wants to do. But I think, I think we've kind of covered it fairly well.
Easy.
Yeah, for sure.
Fantastic, guys. Well, Simon, get in touch with Dan to buy his Tigger off him. And we'll hopefully see some of you guys at the Southern Shooters Catch-Up next Tuesday, or the Tuesday, which is the 23rd of February. For those guys who are not in Adelaide, we'll catch you somewhere, or we'll be back in a few weeks. So thanks very much for listening. Thanks, guys, for all coming in tonight. And we'll speak to you guys again soon.
No worries. Thanks.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the Precision Shooting Podcast. To continue the discussion, check out our Facebook page. And for more information, head to our website, www.precisionshootingpodcast.com.au. This episode was brought to you by Impact Dynamics, advanced training for the precision shooter.